What's up guys, it's Henry here again and welcome back to our channel and to another episode of Apparel Academy. Now many new decorators start out in the apparel decoration world with printing and many start out with heat transfer printing because it's so easy to do and very easy to learn. However, not all heat transfer methods are created equal. So in this episode of Apparel Academy, I'm going to compare and break down for you the differences and the pros and cons between two particular heat transfer methods, heat transfer vinyl versus heat transfer paper. I'll go into the obvious differences between these two methods and let you decide what's the best fit for you. So let's jump right in. Now before we begin, as always, make sure to give a quick thumbs up to this video, smash that like button, and make sure to subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with future videos just like this as soon as they come out. So first off, we're going to talk about heat transfer paper, or otherwise known as a two-step heat transfer printing method. So a two-step heat transfer method using heat transfer paper actually involves printing a design onto a transparent sheet of transfer paper first. You can do this typically with a printer such as the white toner transfer printer, being able to print different designs as well as lay a layer of white to be transferred onto dark garments. After you printed your design onto a transparent sheet of heat transfer paper, in the step 2 of this two-step process, you then transfer your design onto an adhesive sheet using a heat press. Then you peel away your adhesive sheet from the transfer sheet after you've heat pressed that on, and then you transfer that design onto a piece of garment or a substrate, also using a heat press. After pressing it, you then peel away this layer of transfer paper so that you're left with the design adhered to the actual garment or substrate. Printing designs using a white toner transfer printer allows you to use this process to transfer various designs onto a variety of substrates, including garments or even hard surfaces like wood and metal. All right, now that I've covered the process of a two-step heat transfer method using heat transfer paper, let's kind of dive into what the heat transfer vinyl process is like and how that works. So there are several different ways of doing heat transfer vinyl, but I'm going to cover the most common way and the most basic way so that it is more of an overview of how this method works. First off, you need to prepare your design to be cut using a vinyl cutter or cutting it by hand. Then you measure the surface area that you're printing on and you scale your image in your software and then mirror it. This is because heat transfer vinyl has a clear plastic carrier sheet that covers the top of the vinyl, and the other side is where the heat-sensitive adhesive is. So you cut your design on the adhesive side, and then your clear plastic sheet on the other side holds your design in place until it's applied to your substrate. After you've mirrored your image in your vinyl cutting software and you've actually sized it to the surface area you're going to be transferring onto, you then load it into your vinyl cutter and let the machine do its job and cut the design. So now that your design has been cut by the vinyl cutter, the step that comes next is very particular to the heat transfer vinyl process. You actually have to use a weeding hook or tweezers to weed out the excess vinyl from around your design that you do not want to get transferred onto your final product. And then you activate the sticky vinyl by applying heat and pressure, either by using a heat press or an iron. Finally, you peel back the carrier sheet and you have to leave it for about 24 hours, essentially overnight, to cure onto the garment. Okay, so that's how heat transfer paper and heat transfer vinyl works. Now that we covered how those processes actually work, let's kind of dive into some details on comparing the two and what are some pros and cons between each. Okay, so first off, we're going to be comparing investment costs between these two methods. As I mentioned before, with heat transfer vinyl, in order to be efficient, you want to have some sort of vinyl cutter in place to be able to cut your design automatically. Typically, vinyl cutting machines with a 12-inch width will run about $200 to $400 to get started. And large industrial vinyl cutters can go up to anywhere between $6,000 to $7,000. Now, besides the equipment, the supplies that you need for heat transfer vinyl are also relatively inexpensive. For example, vinyl rolls are sold on Amazon for as little as $12 depending on the size of the roll. On the other hand, white toner transfer printers that are used in the two-step heat transfer method using heat transfer paper can typically range between $4,000 or $5,000 or even upwards of $6,000 to $7,000. However, because of the slightly higher investment cost in the equipment up front, there are a lot of resources and options to be able to finance these machines for very low monthly payments. For example, here at Ricoma, we have the white toner transfer printer, the Ricoma R550, that start at just $139 per month. Now, in terms of supplies that are needed for the two-step heat transfer method, they're also relatively inexpensive, just like heat transfer vinyl supplies. For example, heat transfer paper that are used in the two-step heat transfer method typically range for about 80 cents to maybe $1 a sheet. The heat transfer paper is going to be the bulk of your cost in supplies because things like toner that are used for printing the designs actually can yield a lot of pages and sometimes 3,000 to 4,000 pages without having to replace them. That ends up on average being about 25 cents in toner or ink cost for one particular print on a t-shirt. So in this category, while both methods' supplies are relatively inexpensive, I'll give a slight edge to heat transfer vinyl, given the fact that heat transfer vinyl equipment, such as the vinyl cutter that's needed, is relatively inexpensive and only a couple of $100s versus the white toner transfer printer. So because heat transfer vinyl has a slight edge in the upfront investment cost, it wins out in this category and therefore gets 1 point on the scoreboard. Next, we want to compare the complexity of each process. While both methods have a relatively straightforward process, there are some specific considerations to keep in mind. The two-step heat transfer paper method using a white toner transfer printer only involves printing, peeling, and pressing the design. Heat transfer vinyl, on the other hand, requires cutting the vinyl, weeding the vinyl, and then pressing it onto the substrate. The more complex the design is, the more challenging and time-consuming it will be to weed the actual vinyl. In fact, sometimes it might be even hard to see where the cut marks are to be able to weed the vinyl. Now, there are hacks and other options to be able to help you weed the vinyl faster and easier. For example, you can actually hold up the vinyl to a window or to light to be able to see where the cut lines are. Also, there are options such as the Cricut Bright Pad, which allows you to put the vinyl on there to see where the cut lines are to make weeding easier. So while both methods are pretty straightforward and easy to learn, heat transfer paper wins out in this category because it doesn't involve any weeding. And this will save you a significant amount of time, especially with complex designs. So with that, heat transfer paper gets 1 point on the board, and now we're tied at 1-1. Okay, so on to the next category. We're going to be comparing the complexity of designs and the variety of designs that you can do with either method. So first off, with a two-step heat transfer paper method, you don't have any limitation with regards to the number of colors or the type of design and the complexity of the design that you're able to print and transfer onto a substrate. With heat transfer vinyl, you are limited to one color per design layer. To do a multicolored heat transfer vinyl design, you have to layer different vinyl pieces on top of each other and align different layers of the design using almost like a stencil to be able to align the design perfectly and get a multicolored design done. To do this, you have to copy your design in your software and be able to weld or merge different parts of the design together into one overall design. So given the fact that heat transfer vinyl is limited to one color in design per vinyl layer, while heat transfer paper is not, using a white toner transfer printer, it really gives the edge and the advantage to heat transfer paper in this category. So now if you're keeping score, heat transfer paper has a total score of 2 versus heat transfer vinyl having a total score of 1. On to the next category where we'll be comparing durability and feel. So to start off in this category, both methods, heat transfer paper and heat transfer vinyl, adds an additional layer onto your fabric or your substrate. However, with heat transfer vinyl, it is especially noticeable because you can feel the plasticky feel of a vinyl versus toner being transferred onto a piece of paper. Also, if you remember what I mentioned about the heat transfer vinyl process, it does need to be cured on the garment for about 24 hours after it's being pressed on. So that is something that doesn't need to happen with heat transfer paper, and it adds an additional step where you do have to wait for that vinyl to adhere properly onto the substrate. Now, both methods typically can last for about 30 to 40 washes, but especially with heat transfer vinyl, it is recommended and highly suggested that you wash it inside out to prevent any cracking or immediate peeling of the heat transfer vinyl. So in this category of durability and feel, I give a slight advantage to heat transfer paper, given the fact there's less maintenance, for example, not having to leave it out to cure for 24 hours, and a slight better feel versus heat transfer vinyl. So with that, I'll give 1 point to heat transfer vinyl and 1.5 points to heat transfer paper for that slight edge. Finally, let's compare the variety of substrates that you can transfer onto for these two methods. So in this category, it is a virtual tie, as both heat transfer methods, either using heat transfer paper or heat transfer vinyl, can transfer into a variety of substrates such as wood, aluminum, hard surfaces like metal, and even ceramic, and of course your regular garments as well. Also on the garments itself, it doesn't really limit you in terms of cotton versus polyester or cotton and poly blends. It's really anything that you can put under a heat press. So given that neither method is really limited in the variety of things you can transfer onto, both heat transfer paper and heat transfer vinyl gets 1 point in this category. All right, that's it for us for today, guys. I hope you found that information helpful. Obviously, there are some pros and cons with either method, but I hope that that was able to give you a solid breakdown and a detailed breakdown for you to decide which is best for your circumstance. Overall, it just breaks down into several key differences. With heat transfer paper, you don't really have to do any weeding, and it kind of saves you the hassle of doing that and less maintenance in the overall process. With heat transfer vinyl, it's definitely easier to get started in terms of upfront investment cost in vinyl cutting equipment. However, you do have to compensate for the time that it takes in future processes, given you do have to weed very complex designs. Also, keeping in mind that heat transfer paper, you're virtually unlimited in the variety of designs because you can print different colors, multicolored designs, as well as different gradients onto a particular type of garment. This compared to a heat transfer vinyl, where you're limited to one color per vinyl layer, and if you want to piece together a multicolored heat transfer vinyl design, there's a little bit of work to be done on the alignment. So I would say in general, if you're looking for faster speeds, more variety of designs that you can print and transfer, probably go with the heat transfer paper method. If the designs you're doing are very simple one color designs and they're smaller orders, heat transfer vinyl is also a very viable option to get started with because it's lower cost and it works very well for these simple designs. All right, guys, so that's it for us for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a quick thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Also, if you're interested in comparison videos like this and you're interested to learn about sublimation printing versus heat transfer printing using the two-step heat transfer paper method, I actually have another video on this channel comparing those two exact methods. So check it out in the card above and in the link below. Also, before I forget, if you're interested to get started in the apparel decoration business with heat transfer, make sure to check out our Ricoma R550 white toner transfer printer packages that includes not only the printer itself, but also heat press and transfer paper and other accessories to get you started in this business. Go ahead and click the link in the description below to talk to a product specialist so that you can get started with the package of your choice. Make sure to join our free Facebook group, Embroidery and Custom Apparel Mastery, where you can connect with other apparel decorators like myself and other experts in the industry to learn from the community. Finally, make sure to follow us on Instagram at RicomaHQ. We post there daily so you can keep up to date with the latest news and trends happening in the world of decorated apparel. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and see you guys next time.